Trademark move. I'm Dave.
I'm Sean with my empty cup.
Mine's not empty. I
Oh,
can't tell you.
nice.
I'll tell you what's in there.
Okay. This is
Anyhow.
Barstools and Bandtalk. And I have to show you this one because this is the one that's full. And it says, Sean, beneath the steely exterior beats the heart of a dashing hero. We all knew it.
Yeah.
It's finally confirmed.
All they did was put your name on it. They used the same. I have one that says Dave. Same thing.
That makes you feel better.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm wearing my John Lennon shirt today. I'm a big John Lennon fan.
Right on. They actually, when they sent me this from the manufacturer, it actually had a picture of me on it. So anyway, nice shirt. I'm wearing my Iron Maiden shirt.
Very good. Very good.
And we could sorry Doris, fuck around with this all night, but we got a guest here that again we're gonna knock it out of the park. It's gonna be a great chat. Great chat.
Where to begin? I mean, I guess it all started with Dave Roberts. When we had Dave Roberts on the show, he kind of gave us a little bit of insight to how this gentleman got his start, or got his notoriety, shall we say. And Peter Hendrickson is an absolute legend in this town. And I don't know if I knew the full extent of what he does. He is absolutely all over the world with his audio and lighting pyrotechs displays. And he's going to tell us a little bit about that. I mean, he started off with Titan on the main stage, I guess, that folks here would have known. But he was involved with Bruce Nelson before that in a band called Hooker. That was his first gig, I guess. So they both joined Titan at the same time. Kind of a cool story. But you're also going to remember the Tortec parties. They were so infamous in the amount of people and the top-notch performers that played there. So, you know what? We have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about with Peter Hendrickson, and we're just excited to have him on the Barstools and Bandtalk forum. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Peter Hendrickson.
Hi.
How are you
Good day,
doing,
sir?
brother?
I'm just going to try and expand this here. There, I got you full screen.
There you go. Got a brand new laptop breaking in?
Yes, first Zoom meeting.
There you go. We are super honored.
Absolutely.
So, Peter, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction when we first started. And to the best of my knowledge, your first gig, I guess, with Bruce Nelson in the Hooker band that turned into your gigs with Titan, I guess. Is that how it started for you? Or?
Yep. Yeah, Bruce and I, Bruce had hired me to do lights for his band, him and his brother, Mike Nelson. And we'd done a couple of jobs locally in the Dartmouth, Halifax area. And then Dave had come out to see the band perform. We were doing a gig at Prince Andrew High School. And at that time, the guys were big Kiss fans, and we did a lot of pyro stuff. And during the evening, I set off a large black powder pyro trough and basically smoked the place out. And the Queen of the Lakes pageant, or Winter Carnival pageant, that was supposed to happen an hour later, they canceled or delayed it for an hour. So that was kind of my introduction to Dave.
That's funny shit. That is funny shit.
So Peter, so where did you get the hankering, I guess, to get into that side of the business?
Well, my father worked in audio, doing audio stuff, and I kind of tinkered around a bit in it at that time. I helped him out in the early days doing public address systems. So, like installing stuff in a bingo hall or an outdoor event where somebody was speaking and stuff like that. And then in those days, I was primarily interested in lighting. So I used to go to a lot of concerts in the 70s, early 70s, 72, 73. And I would go see April Wine, Rush, Nazareth, all the rock touring acts at the time. And I'd hang around after, I'd speak to the guys who were doing the lighting, and I got to know these guys. So, as a result of that, I just kind of carried it from there and then started tinkering around with stuff. And that's kind of how I started.
I suppose, I was thinking to myself, it's like, was there much call for that, like in your dad's day? Probably not so much for a light show, but in the early 70s or even mid-late 70s, you had bands like Kiss, obviously, had a huge show. You had
Yes.
Genesis, and then when Triumph came on in the late 70s, early 80s, I mean, they had a
Yep.
big show. So there's certainly a call for it. But I'd say you'd be one of the pioneers in this industry, really, Pete.
Yeah, there was one other fellow in the industry working here prior to me, a fellow named Richard Bonner.
Yep.
And Richard's an old friend of mine, great guy. He was kind of a half generation before, a couple of years earlier, doing a lot of stuff. He was out of Dartmouth High School a couple of years ahead of me. Dave knew him, actually. But I just took it in a little different direction. He did more theatrical type lighting, where I was doing more show lighting. The stuff that was up and coming, he was using traditional fixtures. I was using power cans, which became popular at that time, using some old theatrical fixtures, mixing it in. But he's stuck mainly with the theatrical type. And Richard's still around today, he's still doing stuff.
That's cool. Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah.
Actually, a very good friend of mine lives right next door to his shop down in Fairbanks.
Fairbanks,
so
yeah.
So anyway, it's funny.
There's a lot of great stories from Richard. You may want to talk to him as well. I would say he's probably one of the original characters of the neighborhood as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
He had a house gig in the early days of the Misty Moon when it was over on Kempt Road. And then eventually I ended up getting the gig eventually. But Richard's an interesting character as well to speak to.
Very good. Very good.
So I got to think you're doing all this lighting stuff and you're starting to, because we talked to Bruce and we've talked to Dave and you start compiling stuff and you're putting your own show together. And at some point you got to go, I could probably turn a buck on this if I start renting it out and building bigger systems. Is that pretty much how it kind of unfolded?
That's basically what happened. Was I started out with Titan, and then I kept buying more and more equipment as we grew, and then eventually I had enough that I had a surplus of equipment, because a lot of times, unless we're doing like a high school or one of the bigger places, the clubs wouldn't handle all the equipment that I had. Right. So I was renting it out. My first customer after Titan was Jackie Smith with Razor Boy. Jackie used to rent quite a few lights at that time. Randy Urquhart was working for him. Mm-hmm. And so anything that was a surplus, those guys ended up with, and then they grew their kit from there. But it was quite a bit of equipment at that time. And in the 80s, I mean, I started in 76 with Titan and I left them in 81. But in the 80s, bands typically would carry a light package, either that they owned or they would rent from someone like myself or a company in Ontario or Quebec and travel with it. They'd carry the stuff for probably 6 to 8 months, then return the rental, get the repairs done, take it back out again. So what my business started out as in the early 80s and what it became completely changed. When I left the Titan band in 81, I started working for Richie Oakley. And I worked for them from about 81 till 83. And at that time, I kind of set myself up separately, that I rented my services out and then the equipment out, where when I was with the Titan guys, we were all kind of like brothers, grew up, hung out together. Right. It was less of a business decision than it was more of, I was just having a lot of fun. And at that point, I just decided to turn into a business. I started Tortec in 81 and then incorporated in 83.
So I guess at your peak, Peter, like how many, like, because it's not just lighting, you also get involved in buying PA equipment too. So how many technicians overall, audio and lighting techs, did you have at your peak?
In the peak of just before we went through the restructuring, we had about 56, 57 full-time people.
Wow.
And these were guys from technicians in the shop to guys who traveled with the kits and, audio, lighting, video, staging, power distribution. It started out as a lighting company, eventually bought audio equipment. In the 80s, if bands were coming out of Ontario bringing audio, they probably brought lighting if it fit in the truck. That's really what it came down to, how much stuff you could stuff into the truck to get it down here.
Yeah.
So I decided at that point to make the investment in the audio. And then we ended up getting involved in staging, because doing the outdoor shows, nobody had staging, so it became a natural. And then there was never power, so we ended up doing all the power for it. And then at the last stage of that was getting into the video side of things. So it was a natural progression. Everything was a step. Yeah.
So did you? And I've always thought I want to ask you this question. So you're like tech. You're setting up, you're touring, you're doing all that stuff, and then you start your company, and you go from that to running a business. Obviously, there was a bit of an adjustment, but did you find it tough to kind of, I guess, get off the road, not be the guy behind the board doing the setup, and now you're dealing with banks, and you're dealing with employees, and you're dealing with all that stuff?
And that was a real change for me. And what I did learn was, at the time, at my peak of my career as a lighting guy, there was a point where you had to realize that there were people that were coming behind you that knew more than you did technical wise. And if you're going to try and run a company and try and, go in that direction, you've got to surround yourself with people that are as knowledgeable or more knowledgeable than you. And that's what I tried to do, was to try and position the people and give them the tools that they needed to do the service or job that they were doing. So that was my focus. So I went from a lighting guy to a guy who managed situations, trying to put the right people together. And, in the industry, I've been doing it now, be 45 years coming up. One of the things I'm known for in the industry is introducing people who should know each other but don't. Only because I've run into these people during my career and we've made connections, but a lot of times the people have never met, and I end up putting people together that go on to do other things together. And it's just through, I love the business, I have a passion for it. It's the second job I've ever had. When I met Bruce, I was working at a grocery store for 6 months. And then I got offered the gig with Bruce, and I've never done anything else.
Isn't that
I've
wild?
never done, this is all I've ever done.
That's amazing.
So
That's
I'm
amazing.
not prepared for life.
Well, dare I say, I think you are, because obviously, skipping ahead here, and you mentioned your restructuring. I mean, that was no, we'll call it a Herculean task, because of some things that's, happened in the industry and different sorts of things. You had to, really, I would say, it tested your business acumen more than probably anything you've been up against. Is that a fair statement?
It was tough. The whole, it was a big step back for me, a change. It allowed me to look in and what I was really doing in the industry. I've been able to, get people involved. The O'Regan's group got involved and reinvested in the company, brought it back to life, and full credit to Sean on doing that, and I appreciate it. It's quite a bit different again for me than what I was doing prior to that. And I have to look at things a lot different now.
We kind of spoke before the segment too, Peter, and we talked about how things changed. And you're right. I mean, like I said, the big shows, and it's a sin because I keep watching at the Razor Boys shows or some of the Titan shows, or the old videos that are posted, and I love the big show. I was always a big fan of the pyrotechnics, and the more cans, the better. Hated fucking carrying them, hated fucking putting them up, but they sure look cool when they were there. And the bigger the system, the butterfly cabinets and pushing the shit. I loved all that stuff. You know what I mean? Kids did it. I say kids. I mean, the younger folks going to the clubs aren't ever going to experience that again, unfortunately. But you evolved into the film industry with the sound stage.
Yeah, when I bought the building on Thornhill, the first building, at the time there was a lot of requests to do pre-production for tours. So the reason we bought such a big building is because we were actually building the kits before we sent them out. Right. And then the film industry came to us asking if we'd rent the space. And that's how it started.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of one of the first big movies we did was called Pit Pony, a Cape Breton film.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting film. So it was the first sort of foray into a large scale production. And at that time, we built the entire back of the building to look like coal mining caves. And they brought in a rat wrangler from Toronto and released like 500 rats for the shot, one of the shots. So we had all these trained rats in the studio. I think they got most of them back. But it was pretty crazy. And it was our chance to look at how they did things behind the scenes. Although, you know, over the years, I've been on movie sets before, but never in our own facilities. And it was a nice change. It was really interesting.
So, and obviously those are big productions and there's all kinds of different things that happen, but because I actually work in Burnside and I know, like, you know, there's so many different things that go on in Burnside that people have no idea. So how were you guys able to, you know, to do stuff up there and kind of keep people away and kind of, because really it's kind of done under the cover of the night, if you will. You probably never had a problem doing it, but you know, how did you find that? Were there ever any issues with you know, traffic or those types of things?
Oh no, we, like, one year we did a big movie called The Shipping News.
Yeah.
And you know, the main characters were Kevin Spacey, Julianne Moore, Judi Dench, Reeve Iveson, Scott Glenn. It was crazy. I mean, there was like 9 Academy Award winning actors in the studio. And that particular year, we had a lot of snow in the park. So the plowing didn't really get looked after very well. So a lot of the crew cars were parked along both sides of the street. And of course, without the snow plows plowing, it made it very narrow. So that year we had a bit of a run in. The police were up quite a bit trying to, you know, get the vehicles off the street. But for the most part, you know, we were pretty lucky. We had a big back lot in behind. We had a couple acres of land that a lot of production vehicles could park on. So that worked out.
Peter, what's wrong with dropping a few names? So let's talk about some names that you've worked with now over the years. Starting first with audio, video, and lighting, and then you can talk about some of the films too. But like, what's been some of your highlights, I guess, that you've had over your career that you've worked with some people?
Well, when I was a kid, starting on the business, like, my dream was to work with some of the biggest acts in the world. At the time, the big acts were like Aerosmith, Eagles, Tom Petty, AC/DC, the Rolling Stones, and I've worked with all of them.
Wow.
We ended up getting the call to provide equipment for them. It just was a matter of time and meeting connections through the industry, bidding on the right jobs. I mean, we even provided equipment for the Pope in Toronto.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, when it was on the.
So now you're going to heaven.
Downside.
God love you. Like, you're going to heaven now, Peter.
Yeah. Now there were 3 vendors on that show. I remember I was standing at front of house as the helicopter landed. They have the big video screens. It was like a rock show. He lands and then he gets in the Pope mobile and he's driving around the field. As that's happening, I get handed my check and I'm heading to the airport. And as I get to the airport, I'm at the airport, I'm looking out the window and all I can see is lightning coming down in the area because there was so much humidity that day that there were lightning strikes all around. And he still spoke, and it was crazy. It was like a rock show. It was like, I don't know,
Yeah,
400,000 people there. It was nuts.
Wow.
a lot of Catholics in Toronto.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. So riddle me this, Mr. Hendrickson. So, and I've talked about this before. You know, there's been some, you know, musicians that obviously have made it out of here, but what is it about people on the back end, the technicians, the soundmen, the lightmen, that seem to be sought after from our area, that go all over the world to do shows? I know Roy Monberket is one. I know Andy DeVoe's another guy. They go all over the place, and they're from Nova Scotia. What is it that they're extra, like? Is it because they learn? Is it because they're easy to work with? What is it?
A lot of it's work ethic. The guys love what they're doing. They're passionate about doing it. I mean, money is important. We all work for money, but there's a whole other level beyond that of people who love what they're doing. And the paycheck is one thing, but the passion is another. And most people, you know, I mean, we've had the pleasure of a lot of the technicians that have gone on to do well from here, you know, have come through our shop. And you know, the one thing I did learn early on is that, you know, all employees have a lifespan with your company. Some may only be a year, some may be 10 years, but the key is that you can only take them to a certain level, and then they have a drive to go on beyond that.
Right.
And, we made a point typically of, when somebody wants to go make that move, we encourage them to do so. One of the things that I was doing for a lot of the employees, anyone that had worked for me for 10 years, I gave them a Rolex. And
Cool.
the reason I did was, the Rolex was about a $5,000 purchase. If someone's with you for 10 years, that's $500 a year in a bonus. If you gave someone $500 at the end of the year, would they really remember that? But most of these guys, would they ever go out and buy a Rolex watch?
True.
Probably not. And we made a big deal of it. We'd make a presentation, and it was important to let people know that, you put up with 10 years of my shit, that, at least I can do is do that for you. And,
Well, you value loyalty that way, for sure.
Well,
right?
yeah, but it wasn't buying loyalty. It was about showing your loyalty and the appreciation that, these guys work hard. These guys put in hours above and beyond what most normal people put in, and it's for the love of the business. And as you guys probably know, a lot of things don't go right. They're getting better, but in the early days, you had a lot of fucked up things happen. Promoters that didn't pay, hotel rooms that weren't there when the guys got there, just a lot of crap that happened that these guys had to put up with and be professional while they're doing it, which is, a whole other level. When you're extremely tired, all you want to do is go to sleep and get up and do the next gig. So, the one thing I will say is, we've had a couple of bad eggs in the batch, but most of the guys have been great, and they really love what they're doing, and it's important to treat them well. And, there's a lot of times in the early days when the company was going where I didn't take a paycheck so I could pay these guys, because these guys made the business what it was. So going back to your original question, that's why people are after guys from this area, because they're very hardworking, they're very loyal, and they don't put up with shit, and not in an asshole way. Just, you know what? We don't do it that way, and if you don't want to do it that way, that's okay, but we won't be involved with it.
I just remember all those guys, they were talented generalists outside of doing sound, but they could, tap 220, they could drive a truck, they could fix lights, they could fix PA, they could mix. And it was just like, they were like the Swiss Army knife of the music business, right?
That's a good call. MacGyvers, that's right.
Yeah. So, that technician has changed now. A lot of the new technicians, at the trade school, we would take in guys that took the recording course. The problem that we had was that a lot of what we do was way beyond the recording side of it. So some people that passed through didn't want to do the heavy lifting and the other work that was involved. Typically when we took people into our shop right out of school, a lot of times the first thing they were doing was cleaning equipment, and right down to sweeping floors. And a lot of that had to do with, if you have an attitude towards doing that, then at the next level, that attitude's probably going to be the same thing.
Right.
I still sweep the floors of the shop. At the end of the day, it's got to get done. Work's got to be done, and you work as a team. And if you don't want to, well, you won't be part of the team. It's about working together. We're all going in the same direction towards the same goal. And the end result is you want the client to be happy. Right. And that's important.
Well, and I've point too. Sorry to interrupt, but you're talking about like how these guys are ambassadors for your company too. They're all over the world. You deal with all these different people, different clientele, but that's their first reaction to Tortac East is the guy you had there. So that's important that that there's that degree of professionalism or that that respect or dignity or whatever case may be. So good for you.
The only thing that you really have is your integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you a story. Years ago, we were doing an Irish Celtic tour, and we had taken on the audio lighting contract, and we also took on the transport. And because we took on the transport, I was responsible for getting the equipment to the gig. Well, this was in the early 80s, and the truck driver, the company that we had hired, the driver pulled over to sleep, to get some rest, and he didn't wake up in time and never made it to the gig. The gig, this is the only time this ever happened. The gig was a sold out gig at a theater in, I think it was Albany, New York. I had to buy the house that day. I paid for every seat in the house to the promoter because he had to return the tickets.
Huh.
And that, because I was responsible for it. And it cost me $50,000 that day. But that $50,000, I went on with that promoter and made millions with him because he always called us. It wasn't his fault that the truck never made it. It was my fault. It was my fault. And he had to pay the act. He had to pay everyone. And I ended up paying him for it. But because of that, he ended up with a solid relationship with us that went on for years.
That's a cool story.
So, you know, all you got is integrity in this business. You can take everything else from you. But,
well, it's a good point.
That was important.
Our region, we're known for, I've done business with people from Toronto, and they all, when they haven't done business here, they get the impression that everybody's going to be impressed because they come from Toronto, and they don't get the whole relationship piece that we have down here, and you can't really explain it. And that, you know, that to me is something that I know an awful lot of businesses that should take a tip from that. You know, because it's really, I mean, 50 grand, yeah, that's a haircut, but I mean, for the sake of millions and millions and millions is, you know, if you don't do that, you're pretty much going to sink your business with that guy who was probably doing an awful lot of stuff, right?
Exactly.
But you didn't know that at the time, Peter, and I think
I didn't. But I was responsible for it, and that's the point.
And that's the thing that Sean talked about earlier that I think is a little bit different for maritime entertainers or people in the entertainment business, like you alluded to earlier, is that you want to do the right thing the first time. You know what I mean? And that's something I think they can count on that maritime work ethic to do, is to do the right thing the first time. You know?
Exactly.
Awesome.
So you know, at the end of the day, you're as good as your word. That's all you really are, and you know, you better make sure your word is good. Mm-hmm. and deliver. If you can't deliver, don't shoot your mouth off. I mean, we've done lots of jobs, and don't get me wrong, there were jobs that I took on that I probably shouldn't have, and I got out by the skin of my pants. But you know, it was all a learning process. So what I have learned in the industry is know your limitations, know what you can do and what you shouldn't do. You know, and there's always a bigger player out there, and there's always a better player out there. Know where you fit in the business, and when you're trying to grow your business, know where you fit. You understand where you are in the business. There are some people on their way up, and there's some people on their way down. You know, we're all on different paths at the same time. I don't want to get philosophical here, but you know, that's the one big thing that I learned in this whole thing was that, you know, there is always a bigger guy. There's a bigger wallet. But it's how you conduct yourself in the process that'll get you to the next step. You know, and trust has a lot to do with it. And along with that trust is integrity.
Yep.
And you nailed it, because my grandmother used to say you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down. So I mean, just be a good person. One question I have for you, and it's kind of, and I'm hoping a number of people hear it. So back in the day, we obviously used to be starved for live shows. I mean, you'd get like, and it was really an event. So like if an Aerosmith came, or even, you know, Triumph came or whatever, but we didn't seem to get an awful lot of shows. And I had a lot of people say that had to do probably with geography more than anything else. Fair statement?
Part of it was that, and part of it was people in Atlantic Canada don't want to pay the price of the ticket. Mm-hmm. You know, a few years ago, I don't know if you remember this, we had a show that Celine Dion was going to play in the Commons.
I do.
And at the time, there was a petition going around that they wanted Rush to play. And there was such a stink caused by the media about all of this in such a kerfuffle. Her management just said she doesn't want to come, and they pulled the plug on it. And the problem that the people don't realize or think about is that management is also connected with the management of the other artists that they want to come here. So they look at a crowd, how fickle they are. When there's so many other places to play, why would they come here? One of the problems that we've had is transportation. To get from Montreal, which is a major center, or Quebec City, because of transport and truck routes, you can't get there without double drivers legally. Right. So you have to either put 2 drivers on, or you have to stop in Moncton, which is why Moncton ended up getting a lot of shows before we did, because you can overnight from Quebec City to Moncton legally, but never came here. So, and from Moncton, they would shoot down into the US.
You know, it's interesting. I remember that petition, and it's funny. I had a post on Facebook yesterday. I was driving around. I had to finally turn talk radio off. It was just getting to the point where I just could not listen to it anymore, because it was basically, and I won't say who the host was, but you said black, he said white, and it was just like it was a sensationalized way of, I guess, getting a rise out of the people that were calling in. But that's the Celine Dion thing was exactly that, because somebody started beating the bushes, and it caught on, right?
What people didn't realize was that the same management and the same promoters that buy the shows, you know, sometimes when you're booking acts, as you guys probably know, you got to buy a dog once in a while in order to get the act you want. That's how it works in the business. So sometimes the promoters, like, you know, Sonic Entertainment, have to buy a couple of shitty acts to get a great act. That's the way it is. You know, that's how they build relationships with the people, the buyers that they buy from, or the talent sellers. So, you know, that's all part of the game. And until someone is willing to make that investment, and you got to buy the tickets. And sometimes there's a good, you know, there's a gold nugget in that. Sometimes what you think is a shitty band, you go see them, it's actually a great act. But a lot of people don't realize that in order to get the good acts, you got to take some of the bad ones. You can't take all the good ones.
Jeez, Dave, maybe that's why our band played so much in weird places.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and it's, you know, I'm looking at the grand scheme of things. I mean, you could say it's geography, you could say it's population. I mean, the entire maritime region has what, 1.5 million people, maybe close to 2 if you include all the different land. But it's such a diverse crowd. You one big act couldn't hit Cape Breton, Halifax, and Yarmouth and please all the people. You certainly couldn't do it in Newfoundland. You certainly couldn't do it in New Brunswick. So it's hard to put a tour together down here. That makes sense.
There isn't even 1 million people in Nova Scotia.
Right.
There's 900,000 people in Nova Scotia. Montreal, the suburbs have that many people, have 1 million plus. The suburbs, let alone the city. You know, there's 4 million in Toronto, the city of Toronto.
Right. So,
you know, and we're just hitting 900,000 now. You know, if you look at it from that perspective, and then if anyone from Halifax has gone to a show in Montreal or Toronto, the tickets are $200 and $300.
Right.
You know, when it hit over $100 here for a ticket, people were losing their mind. You think what it cost you to get on a plane to go see a show, buy that ticket, buy the hotel room, pay for the plane, all your restaurant, although it's all part of the experience and nice to get away, but you can't, you know, when you look at $100 ticket, it's a joke.
It's a very good point.
So shifting gears a little bit, Pete, somebody on our page posted a series of laminates from the famous Tour Tech parties, and I believe it was darn near close to 10 years. It was very cool.
I was going to go there.
It actually was 25 years.
Well, oh, wow. And so they had 10 years of laminates, which was very cool. I remember going to one when you guys were up where the car stereo place was.
Yeah, on Lake Crest.
And this was, 91, 92.
Yeah, it would have been that far back. Yeah.
And I remember it was a show, and then I moved away, and then I came back, and, you know, I heard about it. But you guys, so 25 years, and that's, you know, that once you tell us how that started, what it became.
Well, it started out originally just as a Christmas party when we were on Wise Road. And in around the early 90s, we started donating money. We created a fundraiser for Christmas Daddies originally. And then in the early 90s, my younger brother was diagnosed with HIV, eventually AIDS, and passed away from AIDS in 97. And my younger brother, Jamie, was the lighting director for Rita McNeil. And he was involved with the AIDS Coalition Nova Scotia. And these were a group of people who helped people that were on the other side that were not, the inevitable was they were going to die at that time. Now it's more controlled disease, but at that time there was no any kind of cure or extended life. And the AIDS Coalition were really good to my family. They helped my family deal with the inevitable, what was going to happen, kept us updated on all the stuff that was going on. And so we switched from splitting the thing between Christmas Daddies and AIDS Coalition to eventually giving all the money to the AIDS Coalition. What we did for entertainment was a lot of the acts that I'd worked with throughout the years, obviously had great personal relationships with a lot of these guys after working with them, like Kim Mitchell and Miles Goodwin from April Wine, Doug and the Slugs, Doug Bennett. So they would all come perform. We paid their expenses, and they would perform for free.
Wow.
And they donated their services. And, it was a great event. It ran a long time. It was a lot of work, a lot of volunteers.
A lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. The party was famous for two things: the beginning of relationships and the end of relationships.
Yeah, fair enough.
The amount of people that met their wife there or broke up with her that night is pretty funny. But
yeah.
I'll go in the ladder for that one.
Yeah, well, there you go. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a real, the whole idea was just to get people together in the industry and have fun. One of the things too was it wasn't an easy ticket to get. It was. We didn't make it that easy. We didn't make it available to the public. You had to know somebody. You had to have a connection to get to it. You had to know either a technician or somebody to get a ticket through. And we purposely did that way because we wanted to keep industry people or people who were connected to come to it and to support each other. Right. And it worked really well. I mean, we got a great response over the years. First couple of years a little bit slower, but then it became an event. Every January, that was the event to go to. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Peter, throw us a number now. So now that we won't worry about the Christmas Daddies per se, but what do you think that the Tortec parties raised for the AIDS Coalition of Nova Scotia? How much money do you think?
Well, that would be something my sister would know because she handled the financial part of it. I just got the acts together and then, she gave the money I know it was thousands of dollars. I have no idea how much amount.
Okay.
Each year. And some years, we had a snowstorm one year, so it was really rough. It wasn't as good. But she would know that better. But, let's put it this way. It was a lot more than they had prior.
Fair enough.
So, they were happy with it. So.
And I mean, when you guys had that, I mean, it was obviously it was a party, but you had, all the toys and all the gadgets and everything set up. And it was, our version of NAMM, I guess, is the show, really.
We would have people fly in from all over the world because a lot of the manufacturers would send reps. I would have people come in from London, England, from LA, New York. In fact, one day I was coming back. It was about a month later. We were doing an Aaron Carter tour, and I'd flown down to Florida, and it was 2 weeks after the tour started. And I'm at the airport in New York, and this guy comes over and he goes, "Are you Peter?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "And I got to tell you, I was at your party 2 weeks ago. I didn't know who the guy was. He just come up. This is at the Newark Airport in New York. Had a great time. Just wanted to come over and say thanks." And I have no idea who the guy was. He just said that, and then he jumped on his plane. So.
Yeah, and they obviously things change and industry changes, business changes, and you've had to kind of curtail that.
Yep.
Any chance that you might do a one-off or maybe see a comeback at some point just for old time's sake?
It's been asked. It's hard to say if this is the time to do it right now,
Yeah.
Right.
given everything that's going on. But, there has been talk of it. It's a lot more work than people realize to pull that off. The coordinating of the, obviously the talent to get the people to come, putting the space together, organizing all that. It's a lot of work. I mean, at one time when we had the machine going and it was an annual and everyone looked forward to it, it was a lot easier. But there is, it has been talked about. Whether it'll happen or not remains to be seen. I won't say no, but it's going to take a little more work at this point.
Peter, I had a question for you regarding just the evolvement of this crazy entertainment business. And again, you think back to your early days in the 70s, I mean, it would have been you climbing these crazy rigs. There'd be no harness, there'd be no straps, you'd be hanging off like a truss with one hand and tightening up, doing a gel on the other side, I'm sure. But you must have seen restrictions with union and with liability insurance, and you're talking about transportation. That's a very good point, the transportation. I mean, is that part of the equation why it's hard to do your business nowadays, or?
Well, the business is much safer than it was in the 70s and 80s. And at that time, it was kind of the wild, wild west too, because, everything was developing. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time with in the business, I traveled a lot to a lot of trade shows to learn what was going on in other areas. I also went to a lot of shows in other areas. So I got to see how security worked. I got to see how power was done on sites, how people laid their sites out, how the rigs were put in, how the labor was organized, how the union contributed. Like locally, we have a great relationship with the local stagehand union. And I'm a big supporter of people, knowledgeable people, qualified to do the jobs. I'm not against volunteers, but my experience has been with volunteers, people get hurt, and not through malice, through people sincerely, genuinely not knowing what they're doing. We would have people loaders show up in sandals, no protective gear because they don't know any better. It's not because they don't give a shit. They really don't know any better. You only know what you know.
Right.
And so, we try and stay away from volunteer situations. On fundraisers, it comes up a lot, and it's hard to educate people to, when somebody doesn't have, skin in the game, whether they're getting paid or, whether they're committed to the project. A lot of times in the early days, we would get 50 people on the in and 4 people on the out.
Right.
Because they got to see the show. The promoter gave them tickets to the show, and then there was nobody there to tear down. And again, goes back to what we talked about earlier with the crew having to deal with all that stuff, those things are tough. Those things build character in people, and those things are important. And those are things that people who buy the tickets typically don't see.
No,
that's
they
a
don't
very
see
good
these
point.
things that go on, and those are all things that on a day-to-day basis, as a guy running a business and providing that service, we would have to deal with. And you have to have a lot of empathy for these guys who go do this work. And, they need to be compensated for this type of stuff. I mean, right now, the industry is going through a terrible time. A lot of guys are living on the, I don't know what the whole SERP, I guess it's called.
Serbian. Yep.
But that is it's a good thing the government stepped up. I mean, I've been following this in the U.S. My counterparts in the U.S., their government gave them $1,200 one-time payment and said, "See you later." That's it. Yeah. We've been very fortunate in this country. There's I'll call it a Canadian work ethic that's quite a bit different than American work ethic. American people are wonderful people, don't get me wrong, They just have a different demeanor about them than we do here. But the when a Canadian guy is on a crew, he's the guy they look after. He's the guy that they typically go to because they want something done. We'll do it right.
Right.
Or work hard. If you need something done, the Canadian guy's usually the guy who gets it done.
That's awesome.
You nailed
doesn't complain about it.
You nailed about 4 things for me there when you were talking, and one of the ones was the ticket buyer doesn't get to see what takes place. I mean, anybody that's played in a band, even if you're playing in the bars, there's a load in, there's a sound check, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens before a single note is played. And we had Roy Mommerket. We talked to Roy, and you get to understand why a guy like Roy is so proud of some of the stuff that he's done, because he's done it. He's climbed those trusses. He's been on packing up gear till 3 a.m. and sleeping in the bunk of a tour bus or whatever. And people don't get to see that. And I think part of what we're trying to do with this is to highlight what some of those guys and gals do, because it's super important. You don't have them, man, you don't have a show.
Yeah, well, Roy was with us for many years. Roy was a hardworking guy. He worked actually with Rita for a while as well. I've got nothing but good things to say about Roy.
And I mean, the other thing that you were talking about there when you're just talking about how the industry's changing and what's taking place, and a recurring theme since we started this, because this kind of all started around when the COVID thing started up. For an industry that does so much for people, it always seems to be the one that kind of is the doormat when everything else is getting fixed. We kind of have to fight for our scraps. Why do you feel that is? I have a theory based upon I guess some chats that I've had with other people. I just think that people think it's just always going to be there. Therefore, hey, they'll figure it out and they don't need the help. But I don't know.
Well, my theory on that is people only know what they know, and until somebody enlightens them on all of these things, and they're made aware of these things, they're not going to know any difference.
What?
There are a lot of people that really don't care, and that's okay. But there are a lot of people that do, and do appreciate the work that goes into it, but are completely oblivious or unaware of what goes on in the background.
They don't care.
Incredible amount of stuff from the concept to the stuff delivered to stage to striking it, putting it back in the truck, and rolling on to the next show. Most people have no idea what takes place, the amount of work and effort that goes into that.
But
Absolutely.
There's still the same people who are watching The Voice, on TV, or they're watching a movie in the theater, or maybe not watching the theater, they're probably watching it from home. They're going to a comedy show. They're going somewhere. They're going to watch a live. They want to hear their favorite band dance somewhere. All those things require professionals to put it together, not just put it together, to build the equipment, to ship the equipment, to run the equipment, to take care of the equipment. So you're right. If they knew why a ticket cost so much, why you had to pay a $15 cover charge, why you had to pay $100 to get into the concert, why you had to pay $20 for your movie ticket, there's a lot of work that has to be done. So thanks for sharing that, because
here's the thing, Dave. Here's the thing, Dave. Unfortunately, 95% of the people don't want to know how the sausage is made. They just want the sausage. You know what I'm saying? And they don't take the time to find out what goes into it.
Sooner or later, there would be no freaking sausage.
Well, that's right. You're right. You're bang on. You're bang on.
Peter. That's it. I get mad when I heard that statement, because it's true. I mean, like, we had, you call it skin in the game, but we had respect for the equipment. It wasn't ours. We didn't own it. We were renting it, or we were using the services. We had Kevin Woodworth in my day. He had his own gear and his own PA. So, but we had to take every chord, and you had to learn how to wrap that chord. If you wrap around he'd come right after you, boy, oh boy, you wrap around. So you learn to do things.
Kevin's a character.
Oh, Jesus, old turtle.
Yeah. But you want to know what?
Kevin and my brother used to work together quite a bit, actually, in a band in the early 80s.
Redline, was it?
Yeah, Redline,
Yeah.
Well, and to this day, and I have all my own mics and mic kit and all that stuff now, I know how to wrap a chord properly, and I always do.
And he's a drummer. And he's a drummer.
You know what? It's a lot easier, man, to have it nice and properly wrapped. So when you take it out the next time, you're not unwrapping it and unknotting it. Just makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. Don't take pride in your stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. 100%. One of the things that I asked you before we started, Peter, and you said you're cool with it. So I'll ask it again just so we can, get your opinion. But obviously, you did a lot of work with the film industry and stuff, and then there was the change with the tax credit situation with the province, and it affected different people in different ways. So I work for a company who, Mr. D is doing a show. They would come in and they would buy $3,000 worth of sidewalk tape to make sidewalks and crosswalks and all that stuff, and they do that 2 or 3 times a week. That has gone now; it doesn't take place. But you gave me your 2 cents on what you thought. But is it better? Is it worse? Or like, what's your insight on that?
Well, I think the film industry is coming back. It's obviously restricted right now because of COVID. I know that right now the commercial industry, TV commercials and stuff are getting ready to be fired up. I spoke to some people today that are quite active in it. All those same people typically work on film sets as well. There's a new handbook that just came out, COVID-based, talking about all the things you can and can't do. My feeling now is with the way that they've changed the tax credit, it's actually better for the long run. It's more sustainable. I'll be quite surprised if in the next 4 to 5 years that it's not a much better industry than it was. It's going to take some time.
Probably cleaner, based on the conversation you said earlier, right? A little bit more genuine, more authentic, more maritime based, right?
Yeah, I mean the sad part is that a lot of the people that were helping build the industry, when it collapsed, they had to go away in order to, earn a living. One thing about the people that worked in the industry here, the passion is they love living here. I mean, you guys are from here, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, I built my business here, but most of our business for years is not in this area because it just isn't sustainable. However, we were able to, because of the cost of living here is less expensive. I was able to operate the business and continue to operate the business from here. Same with the film industry. Most people here in the film industry love it here. They're great craftsmen. They do what they do. They do excellent work. That Hollywood is calling upon them, and that industry is coming back 100%.
Good, because there's an awful lot of economic spin-offs to it for sure.
Well, there is, and people don't realize that, like what you mentioned about the tape. I mean, you look at the wood to build sets, stuff like that. I mean, we've continued right up until last, even this week we have a Stephen King movie in.
Nice.
They're now moving it out to another location. But in last month or November, we had Books of Blood, a John Carpenter movie in. So we've done, slowly, steadily built it back up, but it is going to come back.
Well, it's good to hear because I mean, I by day I run a traffic control company, and we used to have, when the high season, 3 or 4 crews all over the city, just making sure that traffic is running smoothly, and that hasn't happened for a while, so it'll be good to see again.
Well, the city was pretty accommodating as well. I mean, Halifax sat in for New York, Boston, New England. It worked out really well, and that's why these crews came here, because of the location.
Yeah.
And then when they got here, they realized how good the crews were. They were very happy. I mean, there's one of the first big movies that came here was probably The Scarlet Letter.
Yeah.
And then there was another big one that we did down in the valley, Misery. I think it was called Misery, with Kathy Bates. That was a pretty big one. I mean, that one used the entire arena in Wolfville. They built a subfloor, and there was a whole outdoor scene, and and that was in the early days. But we've done some pretty big things for.
But you nailed it when you said the spin-off there. I mean, there's local construction workers, there's carpenters, there's electricians, there's all those folks are involved. It's the restaurant business, it's the hotel business. I mean, all those spin-off business stem from one industry like the film business, you know what I mean? One industry like the music business, you know. And I like what you said earlier. It's like we're not just music and film; it's the entertainment business. Because you said,
and that's important distinction. I mean, it's now all about entertainment. I mean, when I was one of the original directors that started the East Coast Music Awards. There was 5 of us at the time, and when we started them, one of the big things that was important was it was a send off to the Junos first and foremost, because it was typically done in February prior to the Junos. And then what we did was, when we got it moving, we moved it to cities around Atlantic Canada to basically spread the wealth around, because when that hit a city like St. John's, Newfoundland, or Charlottetown or Sydney, the economic spin-off that happened in those cities in February, which nothing was happening, was phenomenal. You know, so you look at the gas that was spent on the vehicles, the hotel rooms, the bars, like there was just a massive amount of things going on that otherwise never would have happened. In the day, the government sponsored that event. They kicked in money, but they got it all back in tax dollars.
big time.
CBC used to step up, and they helped produce the award show. In its day, it was a really big show. It was actually the first East Coast Music Awards were the first television show to be done in an arena. The year after our show was when the Junos moved to an arena. They copied that.
We had a question 4 or 5 weeks back, and I don't know the answer. Maybe you can answer it. Somebody said, "Where's Rob?" Because Rob was one of the 5, was he not?
Rob Cohen?
Yes.
Yeah. I ran into Rob a few years ago. I think he's still living in the south end of Halifax. He just he had a run-in with the way the show went. I mean, I give Rob full credit for the original concept of the Maritime Music Awards, is what it was the first year, and became the East Coast Music Awards. Rob had the vision, and Rob is an interesting character, and I think he'll admit he's not the easiest fellow to work with. Self-admit that. He had a way about doing things, and it didn't always rub right with everyone. But I believe in his heart that he had best intentions, and eventually there became a separation on that, and that was unfortunate. But in my mind, he was the guy who came up with the original concept, and we ran with it. He came to me, the first one was at Pub Flamingo, I think, and then we went from there to the Crazy Horse, then to the Rebecca Cohen, and then it just kept going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people bought into it, and then a lot of that people got on board. Sponsorships started to happen. But in the early days, I mean, it was just a get together at a bar. You guys are great. You guys should be given a word for it. And he at least had the vision to see that. And then all the other people that came along after that, it has changed. And like anything that grows, people have opinions. Oh, it was better back then, and this and that. As long as the legacy continues in the spirit at which it was intended, that's good. I'm not involved that much these days with it, but the intention was to thank the East Coast artists for what they did and help promote them moving on to the Junos and the awards, be above and beyond
build them
that.
up. Yeah, you wanted to help build them up. Yeah, for sure.
And at the time, the economic spin-off of moving the award shows around to help grow, music in those different areas. Because a lot of those areas didn't have much support in the way of, some of them had, bars and bands. There was no theaters. There were no big outdoor shows. All of that stuff came down the road. It all came eventually. It just took time.
Peter, we don't want to take a whole lot more of your time. I want to say thank you, first of all, for being on the show. Sean may have a couple of questions too. I'm going to I've asked this question to a couple of guests now, and I don't want me to put you on the spot, but it's kind of an interesting concept, in my opinion. I'll let you know what you feel your biggest accomplishment has been, and maybe your biggest regret.
Well, the biggest accomplishment for me is the fact that I'm still doing it after all these years. You know, I never finished high school. Not that it hurt me, but my last year of high school, when I was working with Titan, they would pick me up on Thursday. I would go to a gig on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. In those days, it was all high schools, and then they'd drop me off, and I'd go to school on Monday. And it wasn't really a recipe for success for high school. However, you know, do I regret that? Perhaps, but I've had so many great adventures in my life. I mean, I've been to some of the most amazing places as a result of all this, and you know, I don't think I could trade it for anything. Everything along the way for many years was all up. You know, for a period it went down, and like anything in life, sometimes that happens. It's how you deal with it and move on from those things that's important, and to not dwell on, you know, the bad things that have happened. To look forward and realize that, you know, at some point you can rise out of the situation, take the tools that you've and the skills that you've learned along the way and build something bigger and better.
Right on.
And that's the only way I can look at this.
Yep.
You know, I love what I do. I'm very passionate for what I do, and not to boast, but I am good at what I do. I
You're
know
very
what
good
I'm
at what
doing.
you do. You're like the best.
And I've learned by mistakes, and I've learned from other people's mistakes. And I've had the fortune to be able to do that, and sometimes the misfortune of learning from my own mistakes. However, it's always important to acknowledge that.
Yep.
And move on.
I have one final question, and I'm glad you.
Sure.
Every time Dave asks that question, I pray that the answers, and my biggest regret is to say yes to being on this damn show. So thank you for that, Peter. But here's my question. You mentioned Sonic, and so Mark Horton's a buddy of mine. I was talking to Mark, I guess last week before. So he said what he's doing right now is he's taking everything that they currently had in 2020, and he's trying to push it out and figure out what can stay and what might be in 2021. So, you know, we made the joke, 2021 is going to be a good year. Do you think it is going to be a good year? Do you think there's anything left of 2020? And are we going to be a destination of choice for some of this stuff to start coming back here when this is all done?
Well, I guess good is all your perspective. You know, is it good compared to 2020? I'm pretty confident it'll be better than 2020. The way 2020 started is fantastic for us. 2020, actually, out of the gate for January, February, we were launching into a huge year. It was probably going to be one of our biggest years ever. You know, all you can do is take what you've got out of this year and look at it and assess it and try and pick the good things out of it. Because there's a lot of crap in there that you can dwell on and be mad about and upset about, but look for the clever new ideas.
And we're still the fuck alive. Let's be honest. Like, we didn't die, so that's one.
Well, we didn't, but learn from that, you know, and try and figure out something in a positive and better way to do things, and it will come, but don't and if it doesn't, walk away and go back and look at it again. You know, something good will come of all this. It can't be all bad.
Peter, you're a guy that would appreciate this, because I mean, this is something I've asked a lot of people, because a lot of folks like friends of ours like Maurice Coyne. There's another some of the younger folks we talked to, Andre Pettipaud and the Giants. These guys they're seeing things a little differently. They're looking at live streaming as being the new normal almost, you know, and they're trying to almost build their entertainment business around it a little bit. Are you being approached by anybody with a better system or a newer system or something that's more conducive to live music online?
Well, you know, my thoughts online are, right now people are just trying to survive. They're trying to create revenue streams to keep them going. You know, it will be, in my opinion, near impossible to replace the live music experience. Look at the first time when you were a kid and you went to a concert and you walked home that night with your buddies. You went to that concert. You know, I remember in 1973 walking home from an April Wine concert, and it was just, I was over the moon. The experience of the loud music at that time, which I'd never experienced. I mean, I'd been to sock hop dances as a kid, but never been to a live band and the music playing at that level. The light show, the way people acted in a crowd was completely different at a concert than it was at a DJ spinning music, which I'm not criticizing that. It was just a whole other experience, and I remember that when I went home and went, I want to do that. I want to be involved in that and make that happen. And that's where it started for me. And then I just figured out a way to become part of that. I've run into people, recently that were disc jockeys in the day who are still tied into that and still doing some kind of work on it. And they look back and think, I wish I'd have done something else, or wish I could have done more. It's still all entertainment at the end of the day. I just chose a thing that was really, when I was a kid, really impacted me in a positive way. And I wanted to do something with it. And it was important to do something with it. And even today, when I go see a big show, I'm always looking at what's going on the stage. I'm looking at the artists. I'm looking at the production. How can I either, for lack of a better term, steal some ideas or expand upon ideas that I've seen and put my spin on how it goes. I still do that today when I go to events. When I'm backstage, I'm looking like, really, did they run the cable that shitty on every gig? I'm always looking to try and to make it a better experience. Always looking to try and see how I can make it safer and make it better. So, I don't, with what's going on right now with COVID and smaller groups, eventually that will change. I mean, today I heard they were opening it up, allowing groups of 10 and then 50 spaced apart. That will change over time. Eventually, like everything, time will, we'll develop that. But, the live thing, I don't think, for me, this is just my opinion, I don't think streaming will ever replace it. I think streaming's a great thing during this time when people are separated and all that, don't get me wrong. But there's nothing like being at a live concert and experiencing that and looking at somebody else experiencing it.
Exactly. Yes.
There's just something about live music. It's totally different. And that could be in a crowd of 50 or a crowd of, I've been in crowds of 500,000 people at the SARS concert in Toronto. I mean, I remember standing there. I was at front of house and I was on the second level, and I couldn't see the end of the crowd. And that crowd went for a mile or two. Wow. And when AC/DC finished, the Stones came on. Well, AC/DC basically stole the show. And the Stones are a great act. I love the Stones, work with them. But they stole the show that night. But being in a crowd of 500,000 people, there's some energy there that you can't get online. Exactly. That is totally, you can't replace that. So, there's just a vibe that happens.
I think we're going to wrap and let you enjoy the rest of what's left of your evening. But I do have one quick question for you, and I'm going to give you a little bit of racetrack here, because you mentioned going to shows and what have you and stealing stuff. In the last 5 years, if I said, Peter Hendrickson, what's one show in the last 5 years that you were at that just absolutely made your jaw hit the floor, what would you tell me?
I don't know about jaw hitting the floor, but the magic moment. When I was a kid, I dreamt of working with all of these big acts that were big acts at the time. And, working with the Eagles, that was like over the top. I love the Eagles. Working with the Rolling Stones, working with AC/DC, Rod Stewart, Def Leppard. I actually have no idea how many bands I've worked with. I couldn't tell you. In the 80s, I worked with George Jones, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and they were all magical. They were all experiences that I didn't have, going from one, soup to nuts of all different types of artists. Some artists that totally impressed me, some that some that were underwhelming that I thought were going to be a lot better than they were. But it could have been a bad night.
You were talking about that DJ when we were off air earlier, and it was one of your favorite shows that you saw in a long time. A lot of energy. You said DJ. I can't remember his name now. A hip hop guy.
Oh, see, I problem is I have CRS. I can't remember shit. Yeah, geez, I don't know. That I appreciate music for music. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. When I was younger, I had a problem with I didn't like disco. As I got older, I started to appreciate the music. I really did. And when I was a kid in the 70s, I fucking hated it because disco killed live music, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know. But what I did realize is that it's just another art form, and it was. And now I appreciate. I love the Commodores, for example. And Ohio Players and those guys that I never would listen to their music when I was a teenager. Now I love listening to that stuff. I just, time will change you, and hopefully for the better.
Good point. I mean, it's milestones. My first milestone for me, I saw Aerosmith, I think, in '82 when they came here, but Iron Maiden and Twisted Sister, that for me was
just...
that
show.
I'm sure you did.
I'm sure you did. Did Eileen Stubbs?
I'll give you a quick little story on that.
Yeah, please do.
We got a call. I got a call. It was that show was on a Sunday night. I got a call on Saturday. There was a major snowstorm. Sorry, that was the next time they came. The major snowstorm. Graham Holmes was a tour manager. He called me and said all of their gear was stuck offshore, coming from Germany, and asked what we had available in the shop. And I think at that time we owned like 600 power cans or something like that. He said, "I'll take them all, brother." And an old British guy. And so we went to the shop. The place wasn't even plowed. Got all the gear prepped. He had the trailers show up. I think there was 3 trailers come in. Loaded all the stuff up. Went and did the show. And it was great. Everything worked out. 2 years ago, I'm in Cavendish doing Carrie Underwood. And one of the stagehands comes over and says, "Yeah, there's a guy over here that wants to say hi to you." And I turned around. It was Graham Holmes.
Wow.
So going from those guys, Iron Maiden, to Carrie Underwood.
Incredible.
Meet the same people along the road.
Yep. Just be a nice person. That's all you need to do, right?
Exactly.
Be a nice person.
You never know who's going to write you your next check, so always be nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fucking man. Peter, I appreciate this interview. This has been great. Because we could talk all night long, but I don't want to take. Do me a favor. How about this? We're going to get a ton of questions. Why didn't you ask him this? Well, you should have said this. What about this? What about this? Would you come back on the show again?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get a ton of questions.
Now that I figured out Zoom.
Part 2.
Yeah, runs the biggest. You run the biggest lighting and sound company in Atlanta, Canada, but we couldn't get Zoom going for you. A drummer and a bass player help you do it. How sad is that, right? But you definitely connected some dots for us here tonight, Peter. Because, like I say, there was some unanswered questions, certainly with the Titan years, right up to that last Iron Maiden story. It's great. So,
and
there's tons of those stories. Tons.
I love. Listen, do me a favor if you can. Look back to some notes and just drop some names, because it's unbelievable to me. I said, well, how does he keep that busy in Birds? Because I know that what the music industry is like here. I said, how does he keep it going? I had no idea. You were so. You just did a Metallica show in Australia, you said, or something.
Yeah,
before.
We did back-to-back shows in Australia. The other thing we've been doing a lot lately is comedy. We have the contract for Jerry Seinfeld in Canada. We do all of his arena shows. We're supposed to do a TV special in November, starting at Staples Center in LA. That got pushed off to next year. So there's a whole bunch of dates coming up. And Jerry's going to be in Halifax in the new year.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Yeah. So he'll be back.
Nice.
But, we did, the last couple of years have been big with comedy, from Trevor Noah Joe Rogan, Jim Gaffigan, almost pretty much any comedy that's come
Joe
through here
Rogan.
at the arenas. We've done them all.
Yeah. And well, see, again, it's the entertainment industry. You nailed it when you
Yep.
said that. You know what I mean? And that's what you need to evolve into. Your business grew to the entertainment. And we're super proud of you, Peter. Like I said, you're a Dartmouth boy. And
Oh, yeah.
Did you go to Prince Andrew?
Yes, I did.
Oh, PA alumni.
Yeah.
Myself. So there
we're
you
all
go.
here.
That auditorium, I tell you, and I still go in there and I get chills in that auditorium knowing some of the stuff that took place in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you some of the stuff that took place.
Yeah, you likely don't want to, but I get it. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much for doing this. And like I say, there'll be a pile of questions that we're gonna have to pound you about for sure.
Great. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you
Peter.
so much,
Appreciate
Peter
it.
Hendrickson. Have a great night,
Take
brother.
care.
All right, all the best.
Bye-bye.